My friend Steve Hancock and I planned a backpack down into Lost Cove, a ghost town that existed 1864, 1957, very remote, very center of this picture on the Nolichucky River. And unfortunately, it didn't go as planned. This is our actual backpacking route on an old road. We were stopped from driving on that road by this gate at the very beginning.
Well, trips don't always go as planned. And we had a little bump at the beginning of this one. We're going to the Lost Cove area, an abandoned village in the mountains on the Nolichucky River. And we were driving up Forest Service 278, and after just a short ways, we ran into this. A gate that's totally blocked it, which we had no idea was the case. And there was actually a couple of guys who come up here a lot. They didn't know about it either, but the road must have washed out or something. So after considering a bunch of alternatives, we parked back down there. There's my friend Steve and my car and his car. We were doing the social distancing thing. We're going to walk up to the place where we were going to start hiking, the trailhead. Probably camp there. These guys told us about a spring there. And then we will day hike down to Lost Cove. That's the current plan.
Steve is a much faster hiker than I am, and so he started on up the trail and I followed shortly thereafter.
This is my lunch spot, a really nice location on a curve of the road as it heads up the mountainside, not too far from the trailhead. But I got really hungry and decided to stop in this grassy area here beside the road. Pileated woodpecker in the background. So we got to the trailhead after the road walk, and there was no water. Could not find water anywhere. The guy told us it wasn't far. So we didn't know what to do. Steve ended up walking on up the trail a ways toward the top of Flattop Mountain. There was a blue line that crossed the trail. Thought there might be water there. He called me. We've got cell reception later, and said there wasn't any water up there. So I decided to go down below the road where there were some watery looking bushes and so forth, but I didn't hear any water or see any water. But after I got down here, we were right up there. I think you could even see my pack, or one of our packs there. Came down to right here, and all of a sudden I heard water. So we have water. You can hear it. Well, we're not going to Lost Cove today. When Steve got back down to the trailhead, and I got back from getting water, or looking for water and finding some, we both finally agreed that it was too late to day hike down to Lost Cove, which is 2.5 miles, but well over 1,000 feet of elevation drop and then gain. And the campsite, even though I found water, is not that great. It would be basically camping in the road, and gravel road at that. So we hung around and talked a while, and decided to head on back to Knoxville. Hike back out and head back to Knoxville for tonight. So after talking a while, I decided to head up, before walking out, up to the grassy bald above the trailhead. The trail basically goes up to the top of Flattop Mountain, where there's kind of an open grassy area, high grass, Steve says. And then it starts dropping off to the side. So I'm heading up there now. Steve actually decided he liked where we were sitting. It's a nice breeze and shaded. So he was going to read a while I go up here. So I'm heading up a forest trail, which is right there.
The day wasn't totally full of disappointments. We saw some great wildflowers like these. And also I'm heading up to the Joe Louis Field, which is a great grassy ball with wonderful views in all directions.
I finally get to the top of what's called Joe Louis Field. It's some open grassy areas that I assume have been mowed by the Forest Service now and then. Here's the one to the east, and a little gem in it, beauty. There's some yellow flowers of some sort there. Joe Louis Field, eastern section. Going to turn around now and walk up to the western section up there. So here's the western section of Joe Louis Field. A lot of open area, but some bushes coming up, needs to be mowed. That's the Forest Service, I guess, sign for the Lost Cove Trail. Yellow diamond. And looking on to the west, there's the view toward the west end of the Joe Louis Fields and a ridge beyond that. And actually the trail down to Lost Cove goes to the right of that mountain and downward into Lost Cove, which is, you can't see it all, but it's down there. Also the Nolichucky River's down there. And indeed, with that being Lost Cove, this is Flattop Mountain. And Flattop Mountain basically makes a big semicircle around Lost Cove. There's one of the far ridges of it. And the Nolichucky River makes a semicircle on the other side, and right in the middle is Lost Cove. And here's a view of the grassy balls from the far western end. There's the trail sign I passed just a minute ago. And here the trail goes into the woods and commences to drop down toward Lost Cove in about 2.5 miles, I guess. Steve went down the trail a ways and says it's in really good shape. There's the trail sign for Lost Cove Trail. So here's a final look at Joe Louis Field from down below. I'm getting ready to go into the woods on a shortcut, straight down dirt trail that will get me back to the car, and first to the trailhead, a lot faster. Well, it's getting late in the day, toward 6 p.m. Steve is on his way to Knoxville driving, and I'm getting not far from where we parked our cars and finishing up a somewhat disappointing day, but also there were some highlights. Indeed, I think if I do a video of this, I'll call it a failed backpack and some Buddhist Insights. The Buddhist Insights part relates to the fact that driving over here this morning, I was listening to one of the great courses on the Axle Age, and they were covering the Buddha and Buddhism over 3 or 4 lectures. I'll talk about the insights maybe later, but they have to do with disappointments. And today, the disappointments included 4, at least, starting out this morning. I haven't mentioned this, but in Erwin, I saw a Taco Bell and driving over here, and I immediately drove in and was going to get me a Diet Pepsi and maybe a bean taco for an early lunch. And unfortunately, they had a sign that said the drive-thru didn't open until 10 a.m., which, and I didn't have time for that. So, number one. Number two, of course, as I mentioned, we got to the trailhead, driving up to the trailhead, and we had to stop 2 miles short because the road was washed out in places, and it was gated. So we had to backpack 2 miles. And then, of course, we got to the top where the original trailhead is, and couldn't find water, and looked around a lot and wasted a lot of time. Finally, I did find some water, but it was getting late, and so we decided, as I've mentioned, to bail out and go back to Knoxville today. Period. On the other hand, there were some highlights. Some great flowers along the road and the trail. Late spring, early summer flowers, I guess. And also the grassy ball, the Joe Louis grassy ball was wonderful. Great views, and it was pretty. And of course, being with Steve, talking to Steve some, we always enjoy each other, I think. And so that was good. So there were some good aspects, but some disappointing aspects that I will talk about in connection with the Buddhist Insights a bit later on. Well, I'm back just about to my car. There's the gate and my car beyond it, Subaru. And there's, speaking of the damage that's caused the road to be closed and made us walk 2 miles, there's the damage. It isn't too bad. It's only less than, just a little over a tenth of a mile, actually. And lots of it you could drive on the one side, like right there. And there you could straddle the deep ditch if you really need to, or get over on one side. So I don't see the real need, but Forest Service chose to close it and kind of messed up our plans for the day. But I'm back to the car and heading for Knoxville.
Getting back to the insights from Buddhism, I was listening to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. First being that suffering is the cause of unhappiness, and the second that desire and expectations are the cause of suffering. Those two go together. And then the third and fourth I really haven't gotten through yet. I don't need to, but 3 is suffering can end, and 4 is how to end suffering. Our disappointments on this trip were certainly trivial, but they also certainly did pile up. As part of the fourth noble truth, the Buddha set forth an 8-fold path for ending suffering, and the principles are worth looking at. They're as good as any other religion that I've seen anyway.
Well, I am whizzing down Interstate 26 right now through Johnson City and shortly Interstate 81 back to Knoxville. Today wasn't a great day for backpacking for another reason. Just outside of Erwin, I came upon a road closed sign for 107, that is the quick way back to Knoxville, and got rerouted through Johnson City, which is the long way, and up to an hour more, I guess. So I'm getting home